me, Krista Goins, your Resilient Teacher Mom, and I'm here to talk to you about freedom. One of the parts of my story is it is very important for me to have a freedom to be myself. And that all happened from not when I was a young girl. I really was in the eyes on the prize, pursuing my degree and getting to be a teacher was like my only goal growing up since I was a little girl. But the freedom to be me and to value life came from a couple of just life-changing traumatic experiences. So the first one that was kind of a milestone in my life is that my best friend from high school, she unexpectedly passed away. She had passed away, her heart had stopped, and so I got that call at the beginning of grad school that had said, hey, she's passed away. So that was my first traumatic experience when I was 21 that helped me questioning, how I value my own life and what I would like to do, because I was massively depressed on what I wanted to do with my life, which was, hey, I really do want to be a teacher and pursue what I'm doing and put my dreams first. So when I became a teacher, I thought I had arrived, but then I realized that it was really hard. I was having a hard time managing the classroom. Started a classroom with $200 in an empty classroom, so working on the side as a waitress and teaching at the same time, staying at school really, really late, joined Match.com because my best friend thought that I was gonna marry the janitor because I was always at school all the time. So not really having a dating life, not really having a life, but just working too fun for things in the classroom, but working in the classroom, and it wasn't what it was in my head or what I imagined it to be. So I went ahead and had another life experience that hit, and that was the Virginia Tech shooting. Now, the Tech shooting was a surprise to me. My sorority sister had passed away, and I didn't personally get to know that sorority sister. I actually helped recruit her when we were in recruitment. And so I knew her character so vividly. And I still remember to this day talking to her during rounds and just connecting with her that she was such a good fit. But I had lived in the sorority house when I found out that my best friend had passed away. And honestly, in such a depressed state, it was my sorority sisters that showed me a lot of love. And I was already in grad school, so it was a lot of the younger sorority sisters that I had a random roommate who's my best friend, and just my hallmates that lived with me that kind of took me out of the pit and kind of restored me and made me feel good enough to tackle life again. And so going into teaching was hard, but then also knowing that my other home away from home, which was Virginia Tech, was hit pretty tragically. And then the loss of my sorority sister and the loss I felt from my sorority at that time was enough to make me kind of depressed again. And so actually one of my coworkers caught me in the classroom kind of just staring off, and they sent me home. They sent me home for counseling. I got counseling from my district then, and they actually sent me to Tech and told me I needed closure. So I drove to Tech that weekend, and I met with some of my friends who from the Asian organizations were going through their own struggles because the shooter was Asian. And so some racial things going on, and then also just my happy place. It was completely dark and silent and morbid, and it really hit me that this had big effects. So with that in mind, I did my first pursuit beyond myself, which is I decided to advise. Advising for my sorority was my first pursuit of leadership outside of my classroom, outside of any college organizations or high school organizations, because I was fully involved in all those. But I advised for my sorority for 5 years, and actually the last 2 years I was a regional director for, all of this is volunteer work, a regional director for, a province director, sorry. I had a regional director, but a province director where I was kind of leading the chapter councils and advisors of 3 or 4 different chapters in my state. So I had some leadership roles in there, but then, and that was me giving back because of knowing how my sisters gave back to my life when I was going through loss with my best friend. I wanted to be there when we were going through loss from our sorority sister and just the loss of our campus community at that time. The other situation is, personally, we had just moved to the town that I'm in now. Me and my husband, after his residency, because he's a family physician, and we both felt a spiritual calling to give back to the teenagers in our community. We didn't know what that meant, but it meant Young Life. So we became high school ministers to some Young Life students, and that happened for about 5 years. And so that's also my journey into leadership, which advising and being a Young Life leader for teens is very relational. So who knew my leadership would be so relational after being a advisor for college women in a tradition of leadership, women's organization, also from being a Young Life leader, which is all about meeting teens where they're at. And then I entered motherhood. So when I was Young Life leading and advising these people, I actually became a mom, which was a beautiful surprise to me. We actually were praying for me to get pregnant when I first started leading, and it was because I thought I didn't know if I could have babies. We had been trying for 2 years while I was teaching in my other school in another state, but it just wasn't happening. Everybody was having babies around us, and it wasn't us. And I blamed a lot on our job, or my job, teaching. I gave so much to it. I was the leader of a dance crew after school. I, the coordinator of a fundraising initiative for the school. And I just spent all my time doing that work. But honestly, I need to go through that season of teaching because, one, my husband was in residency and always away from home. And I had just moved to this new state. So it allowed me to find myself as an educator, but to also know the hard-headed way that is just not the way to live. I literally gave all my time, blood, sweat, and tears to that job, and I made a big impact, but I didn't have a good balance of life. And so I blamed myself, even though I know it's not true, that I couldn't get pregnant because I was so invested in my job. But I think it was just because me and my husband weren't in a good place ourselves. Because we were both devoted to our jobs, we needed to reconnect as a couple, and we needed to be more than just where we spent our time working. We needed to be us. So, about the second year of marriage, right before we were about to move home, this is where we call home, we decided to reconnect to, one, do some financial counseling to see how we would like to use the money that we were gonna have in terms of with his salary that I wasn't used to, and then also in terms of the debt that I wasn't used to as well. But we wanted to reconnect what our marriage was all about as well. So we ended up renewing our vows on the 3rd year anniversary. Went to a bed and breakfast where we did that by ourselves, and that's where we kind of recommitted to ourselves at marriage that we were going to put that first. With that in mind, I did not take a job, and that's how I ended up having the space and time to do ministry and to do advising, and then having our kids. So back to our kids. I had Reagan 8 years ago, and she grew up in camp and with those teens coming over about once a week. And then Reggie came about. When Reggie came about is when I stepped down as a director and advising and started doing full-time ministry and raising the kids. And so when Reggie was about 9 months or so, we decided that Ben was going to do a career change from urgent care medicine to family medicine in a traditional office, so he would have more time for the kids. So with more time with the kids, we have been here for 5 years where he's working a traditional office schedule. Now we have 5 kids, and I've returned back to teaching once we were on the same schedule, which was enough to get used to. In that adjustment is being on the same schedule, kind of committing ourselves to a schedule at home and figuring out what that is with the kids, and a schedule at work. And so with that in mind, it was a high demand about the fourth child. We realized that we would have to do some adjustments in terms of responsibilities of tasks and duties, and just making space for just, again, recommitting to ourselves in this busy season. So we went to marriage counseling at the fourth child, and we learned that communication needed to be strengthened, and that the duties need to be reallocated to put a good balance for me to self-care, as well as manage the job and be myself. And so that's where my self-care journey came from. I started blogging at first, which to my surprise, surprised a lot of people, even my family and even my husband, that some of the thoughts that I had or perspectives I had and that I wrote about, they didn't even know was inside of me. So I knew I was onto something good in terms of expressing myself, and so I kept up with that blog for the last couple of years. The only time I took off of the blog is when I was in my internship, and that's primarily because I realized once you get into the educational leadership realm in public school education, that you kind of have to leave your personal life aside, and that just because people will judge you by it. So I wanted to not be judged, and so I stopped blogging so that I could leave space for people to know me by my leadership. Little did I know that honestly people are going to judge you either way. And so I returned to blogging after that internship. So that was my first step towards being me. I got myself a kind of a life coach, Keisha Yibby, for Your Greatness, and she helped teach me that she listened to me and what my pursuits and my dreams and ideas were. And then she coached me how to kind of believe in myself. Self-efficacy, I learned that in school, is when you believe in your own abilities. And actually they say that self-efficacy is 90% of the battle. So if you believe that you can do the job and you find confidence in it, then you will effectively do that job. And so I am a full believer in myself, which is the reason why I've given my time to what I do now, which is I have decided to dedicate my time this summer to yoga. It is the practice that I used to give myself to. Even when I was first teaching, it would connect me to myself, my inner self, and it would connect me with mind and body. My body has been pretty worn down between all the stress, carrying the baby, having the baby, virtual teaching has been really bad on my back, and then the stress of this year between the quarantines and the job changes. So yoga is what I committed to for about 200 hours. I've committed to an actual training run by educators called Breathe for Change, because they come from where I have come from, which is a place of stress and burnout and trauma, and they help me to kind of transform myself and my relationships, and to use SEL and mindfulness and meditation and yoga to rehabilitate myself. And in hopes of being trained in this, I can take this back to my community. So I hope that this training will only allow me to teach this to others and help others rehabilitate and transform their lives. I'm also dedicated just to make my family some extra income. I have a lot of talents and abilities, but my motive is always my family on where I want to invest and put it. And so at first, when I was doing a leadership role, it was to impact more people with what I know and my passion for education, which is still there, but I'm more moving towards that I still think I can make that impact inside the classroom. I don't need a leadership role to make that type of impact. I already make that type of impact, and I just need to stay in the classroom. But the leadership role usually pays extra money, which was very enticing in terms of providing for my family, for my kids to go to private schools so they have steady daycare, but also in terms of providing for my family so we can have extra pockets of rest in terms of vacation. My family is yet to afford the time or the money for vacation. When we do have the time, we don't have the money to afford for all 7 of us to go to vacation. And then when we don't have the money, especially in inflation, it just becomes kind of a stressful topic. So I'm hoping with my other extra time, my pursuit in learning how to start a small business. So I am spending my other time this summer outside of school learning how to start a small business. And I'd like to start a small educational consulting firm that teaches my expertise in classroom management and my vantage point in classroom management. I am doing that and pursuing those types of education starting this summer and into the year, so that I can hopefully launch by next spring. So, but those pursuits are for money, and I keep this money tree next to me. My mom's really big on money trees. So I know that my money and my side hustle will help afford for my family. So I have decided to invest my time in myself this summer, that I am doing yoga so that I can be fully trained in the practices that is going to keep me connected, mind, body, and soul, but also that I would be fully trained to share that within our community. I also am looking to be a business owner and to create opportunities for me where I can lead and make money on the side so that I can give my family things that my paycheck can't pay for. The last thing I want to talk to you is I am a big believer in just overcoming adversity. So if you feel that you are a person who has experienced a lot of adversity lately, I'm right there with you. But in a person who has journeyed and overcome adversity a lot in her life story, I just want to encourage you to continue to keeping on. This is a pillow I gave my daughter and that she sleeps with. There was a Halloween where she got dressed up as Mulan, and our friend Tristan did her makeup about 5 times, and she looked in the mirror and she cried every time because she didn't look like the picture. And for me, that was when my daughter first learned about adversity. That picture of Mulan is never something that you can create. It doesn't exist. You know, I'm sorry that's an image that you looked up to, and it wasn't fair for you to think that that image was real. But you're beautiful just the way that you are. So I gave her this pillow. It says, "The flower that blooms in adversity is the most rare and beautiful of all." So I leave with that. If you experience adversity in your life, I'm right there with you. But keep on keeping on. There's freedom for you to be yourself. You just have to find the space to do so. And you just have to believe in yourself, that what you have to offer the world is your purpose. So I hope to see you guys soon, and I'll talk to you later.